Jamie Kelsey Fry from the New Internationalist magazine. You just quickly say hello, will you?
Hello, I'm here to wag my chin with you.
You're not going to have any say in anything. We're just going to talk and talk and talk. But could you just, for a second, can you really think through the last time your computer annoyed you so much you want to throw it through a window, okay? Because it can't just be me, all right? And while you're thinking about that, Jamie, I'll talk to Gavin in Wimbledon on the same subject. How are you, Gavin?
Hi, Kath. I'm really well, thank you. Yourself?
Oh. Yeah, well, you know, I'm fine now. My blood pressure's come down a bit now. But I was so angry at this inanimate object for no reason, really, because it's not its fault. It's my fault for not knowing how to operate it.
Well, that's what I found. Well, the beauty about when in an office and kind of you've got access to kind of a help desk.
Mm-hmm.
I used to kind of, when I'd have a hectic day and everything was kind of getting on top of me, you'd have the freedom to call the IT help desk and they would kind of keep you on hold for probably about a couple of hours, and then that would give you time to kind of cool down, get your day sorted out while you're kind of on hold to these guys while they're kind of trying to sort out what's going on. So I would use it as a kind of a time just to kind of ease off in my day and just let them take over.
Nice tactic.
Yeah.
Do you know, that's so true. There's something always so lovely where the computer support people take control of your computer and you can just sit there going, well, somebody's working on it.
And it's a valid reason. So managers and kind of whoever you're working for at the time, you're at ease because you're kind of getting things sorted out and you can kind of sit back for a little bit and kind of organise your day and cool off, and rather than kind of storming off and kind of like switching it off straight away or whatever kind of things, rather than throwing it out the window. So
but you know, when I said that, you know, when I'm telling you I wanted to throw it out the window, it sounds like I'm doing that radio exaggeration, the kind of show-offy thing that ladies on the radio do. I literally, Gavin, wanted to hurl it out of the window. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I would love to do things like that, but when you're on the 13th floor...
Gavin, don't really do it. But, you know, I was compelled. I was so annoyed with this hunk of... that I mean, I have calmed down, I promise. I know it doesn't sound it. You should have heard me before. At one point, my other half, the Kiwi, popped upstairs and sort of, he never does this. He put his head on my shoulder and went, "How are you doing?" Because he knew that I was going to get violent or swear or...
You didn't throw him out the window. That's very handy.
Again, touch and go, I'll tell you. So, Gavin, you're so right. What we all need is we need access to computer support at home that doesn't cost a fortune.
Ideally, that would be...
Oh, I'd love to be able to have a network that they could link into and just muck about with the mouse. That would be nice.
Well, in a perfect world. But yeah, I think I just wanted to just... that's just a good tip to kind of... to cool down.
Yeah.
Nice one.
A very wise tip. Thank you, Gavin. I really appreciate it. I'm going to leave it there for the moment, but you stay tuned. And if there's anything else you want to, contribute on, emails, text messages, all of it, you're more than welcome, Gavin.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to chat to you. Gavin in Wimbledon there, giving us a call on 020 722 4000. And a couple of quick messages I'm going to quickly read out. Oh, here we go. Andrew in Stepney. Turns out I've obviously, touched a nerve for all of the listeners. Everyone hates their computers. Dear Kath, my computer's less than 8 years old. It's a Mac, but I now cannot do BBC Play again or upload pictures on the Facebook or watch BBC movies because it doesn't have the certain... okay. So instead of frustrating everyone with all the comments and all the jargon, I'll try and get past the jargon, Andrew, but I get it because it's not... A computer that's not 8 years old is still old in terms of computers.
Yeah.
So if it hasn't got the right kit in it, it's not compatible with anything.
Absolutely.
Okay. So computer lives are now a lot shorter than 10 or 15 years ago. It makes me wonder if it's just a buying upgrade, getting more money spent by customers.
Yeah.
That it's not really a technological necessity. Also, I have an old mobile phone. I'm thinking maybe the signing up to all the whizzing, all life-controlling smartphone iPhone is like signing up to a permanent new lifestyle, possibly personality change. Oh, modern life. We can't do it in half measures. Thank you, Andrew in Stepney. He says it's a great show, and it's quite premature of him to say, but in half an hour, and I'll take that. Thanks, Andrew. There's a man after my own heart. Quickly, AJ says on the text messages, "It's funny you've had a problem with your PC today, so have I. I normally use the email facility from my old service provider because it's better than my current provider. But last night, Windows decided to make thousands of updates just like that. Now I have to access my old email account by different means, and I have no more means to access my old files in capital letters. Help! It's infuriating. Kiss, kiss. AJ. Thanks, AJ. You see, I didn't know I was going to be tapping this rich vein of...
It's a rich vein. Everyone's got computers and everyone has these problems. Everyone suffers the tyranny of the wheel going round and round, screaming at it.
The spinning wheel of doom, or the egg timer of absolute despair.
Oh, nice.
Everybody's had those, haven't they? Right, so...
What's it doing to our lives,
I don't know, but I'm taking up far too much of my time. And really quickly, another text has come in, and it feels like it's a little separate from the rest of the show, but I'm going to do it anyway. Philip in South Norwood wants to know, if anyone watched The Return tonight? It's very good. No, Philip, I'm at work. But I might watch it on a catch-up service. It's a new drama on, I think, Channel 4, The Returned. Mm-hmm. It's the latest thing.
Oh.
I'm not very good with the latest
things.
thing. Yeah, I know. The only latest thing I'm watching at the moment is Game of Thrones.
Oh, my Lord.
Mad Men.
You and
Still
half
watch
the
Mad
planet.
Men. I know, it's so good. Anyway. But I've read all the books, so it's not really a surprise to me.
Oh, the books are great as well then, are they?
Yes. But don't go expecting anything that's going to expand your life or your mind. Mm-hmm. It's great mindless airport-style entertainment, you know? Okay. Just quick read, lots of, gore and sex and violence and fun and fantasy world and some dragons. What more do you ask for?
Oh, you've got the dragons, you've got everything.
Yeah, exactly. So, right. Enough of all that, Jamie. I'll stop talking nonsense and we'll start talking news. You are here, Jamie Kelsey Fry, contributing editor to the New Internationalist magazine. Yep. You are here to give me your thoughts, your opinions, your take on some of the news stories that have been making the headlines. So shall we begin, sir, with one that I've already kind of introduced to everybody? Let's talk about Prism. And for those who don't know, Prism is that particular programme that the Americans are upset about that's being used by, is it the Pentagon? No, it's the Justice Department. I'm a bit confused about who's using what. But essentially, American government is snooping, and the Americans are upset about it. They didn't know about it, or they weren't aware of it. Meanwhile, it didn't take long for America to sneeze and us to catch whatever it was that came out of their nose, because now William Hague's having to say, no, we're not using Prism.
Or, well, wasn't clear either way, was he? Which is interesting. But, I mean, the obvious caveat that he comes out with is normal people have nothing to worry about. It's only serious, dangerous terrorists who are a threat to our country. That they're the only people who have to be worried about, and we're very proud that we're using this system for that reason. Since I was looking at this story this morning and choosing it as one of the stories I wanted to talk about, your listeners will have just heard the recent news on the radio. Edward Snowden, 29-year-old, he's come forward as the whistleblower who's released this story. And if you were listening to the news, he was saying, so he tried to get information out about this publicly beforehand, because he's very concerned about what a threat this is to your privacy rights. But no one was listening, so he says you eventually realise these things need to be determined by the public and not by a government representative. So it's great. I mean, I only just found that out while I was waiting to come onto the radio now. So there's all kinds of obvious issues here, which is, well, who watches the watchers? If you want to hit the nail on the head, who watches the watchers, really? And I am very interested, as your listeners know, in the world of direct action, mass civil disobedience, and these huge movements that are happening around the country that have been happening for the past 2 years on a very, very high level. And later on tonight we're going to talk about Turkey, so it's on a very high level there at the moment. But those people could easily be considered to be what they called domestic extremists. So that's how, in this country, if you're a protester, the proper term that the government will use for you, or the police will use for you, is you are a domestic extremist. Now, if Prism is being used to listen in, follow all the emails that someone who's involved in UK Uncut or No Dash for Gas or any of these like activist movements, if Prism is being used to follow them, now that's an extremely suspect situation to be in. Obviously, for your listeners' point of view, if Prism is being used to follow someone who is planning to put a bomb in Heathrow Airport, it's a fantastic way to use Prism, and it's obviously that's a really good justification for a programme like that. But how can we be sure that the government is using it strictly for what you might call extreme bombing terrorists, and they aren't using it for, completely well-meaning people who are involved in No Dash for Gas, You Can't Cut, Occupy, all these other movements. And I think that's where things become very, very suspect indeed.
OK, again, you've made it really clear. There is a definition in your mind between the two things. Someone who is willing to, go to an extreme measure to push their views forward and then cause harm. It's quite all right to snoop on them, but it's not all right to snoop on legitimate protesters. Because the argument that the government could say is that a legitimate protest group is only 2 steps away from moving toward any kind of illegitimate means to propagate their views.
That's why it's absolutely terrifying, this news. Absolutely. That kind of justification could easily come from the government. Someone who's involved in Occupy, for example, yes, they're involved in Occupy. They seem completely innocuous today, but within a couple of months of super training, they may be thinking about doing bombs, which is just really dangerous. That will legitimate them listening, following their Facebook, listening to all their emails, writing down everything they say on Skype. It's a really dangerous world we're entering.
Absolutely. Dangerous, but in some respects, is there an argument to be made that I still want to be kept safe, Jamie? I want someone to be looking out for me.
There is.
How much privacy do I give up? Where is the line where I say, OK, I'm a law-abiding woman, go for it. You look through my emails, I'm a law-abiding woman. Or should I be saying, whoa, I'm law-abiding, but I want some privacy? I don't know where the line is. I genuinely don't. I want them to keep me safe, Jamie.
Everyone needs to be safe in the country, absolutely. But I've been on quite a number of times with you, Kath, because it's fantastic being here.
Bless you.
But a while ago, we were, before the Olympics happened, we were talking about the Olympics, interestingly. There was the whole security thing. G4S failed completely.
As I recall, it would have been inspired by that young man who protested at the boat race.
Yeah, that's right. We were talking about exactly him. Yeah. And I brought up the situation there, which is, you do have to sit back and ask, why did we need to be considering our security at the Olympics so profoundly? It's a huge, expensive affair. You've got to ask yourself, why? What have we done? How does our country behave? Or how does our sort of political system or economic system behave that actually puts us in danger from so many other areas in the world? And I think that's another way of looking at it. Yes, of course we have to have protection in one way or another from extremists and terrorists around the world, but then we've also got to look at why do so many people want to risk their lives to kind of cause damage to this country? What's this country doing that's causing such an uproar in other countries? And I think you have to look at both things. An
interesting point of view, Jamie, absolutely, but doesn't help me with that equation I'm trying to work out in my head.
Yeah.
How much of my privacy do I give up to keep myself safe?
Well, I don't know you that well, Kath, but I know you well enough to know that you could give all your privacy up because you're not going to be talking about anything that's... Well, I might have this completely wrong. You might be someone totally different, but I don't think so. But I don't think that in your Facebook you're going to be talking about the kind of issues that might suddenly ring bells, and make them go, well, no, we have to watch this one because she's beginning to talk about things that are challenging basic assumptions, or at least being controversial, talking about taking action outside of government, outside of sort of normal democratic behaviour.
My Twitter feed is a lot more relaxed than that, I will give you that. But the point is, then I should be able to give up 100% of my privacy, but doesn't mean I'm comfortable with it.
Well, absolutely. But at the moment, it doesn't seem to be something where you giving up your privacy means that suddenly you're going to be getting advertisements because of something that you said on Facebook. This Prism thing is apparently specifically to do with national security.
You trust them? I know you don't.
I don't trust them in the slightest. Come on. Not in the slightest. But I really I'm interested in the whistleblower story because,
Absolutely.
It's great that Edward Snowden's come out, 29-year-old guy. Now, we're all aware of whistleblowers over the years who've had made enormous change for democracy in the world. The famous guys, Daniel Ellsberg, or is it Elsen? Richard Nixon Times?
Yes.
Yeah. So that guy came out and he was revealing what was happening in Vietnam. And the first thing they did was they went and raided his records in his local psychoanalyst. He went to see a psychoanalyst. So they went straight to Daniel Ellsberg's psychoanalyst and raided his records to find ways of besmirching his own personal character. And this is what happens to a lot of whistleblowers. Obviously, a really famous one at the moment is Julian Assange. But what's interesting is...
Well, I would say the really famous one should be Bradley Manning, not Julian Assange.
No, I second that completely. No, I'm behind you.
That's a different thing.
Well, Bradley Manning is a really important one to bring up and what's happening to that individual. But it's very important to have a balanced view about these people because they can become demonised by the states that they have revealed secrets about. But as human beings on a planet, if people are actually putting their liberty on the line so that they can actually reveal secrets that make you look at states and governments and armies and military powers in different ways and shed light on what's really going on, they are heroes. Because if democracy is real, you have to have transparency. So, in fact, these kind of whistleblowers, I think, are heroic. You know, and Edward Snowden, all power to you. 020
722 4000. Definitely get in touch. Fascinated. The story is fascinating. A little bit involved in terms of the actual story. When you start to look into what the Guardian's been reporting, if you haven't read it yet, go and chew over it. And if we'll be here till 1, I'll be here till 1. You give me a call when you've had a little chew over it, because what I find most fascinating is that this is a 29-year-old man, and I do hope that this doesn't lead to him being incarcerated.
Me too, absolutely. Probably will, though, you know.
Well, I believe he's in Hong Kong at the moment.
Stay out there, Edward.
You know, what else can I tell you? But, yes, he was an administrator for the defence contractor Booz Allen Hamilton, and was speaking from Hong Kong after leaking a series of agency documents on the collection of telephone data of millions of Americans. America was caught napping. That's normal Americans. They just didn't know it was happening. But this is a country with many people who are fiercely proud of how their government looks after them and their approach to government and their freedom. So I think that's why this would be quite abhorrent to many of them. I'm fascinated. Do we care as much in the UK? Are we convinced our liberty is safe? Are you all right with them looking at your phone records if that means that everyone else is safer? 020 722 4000. Change gear a little for me, will you, Jamie? Let's talk.
Let's talk eggs on Simon
Cowell. Britain's got Earth talent. Some eggs were thrown at his high trouseredness. Simon, the saviour of Saturday Night Telly Cowell. He's been upsetting some people, hasn't he?
He's taken it very well. So, for your listeners, it was the final of BGT last night, and a young woman called Natalie Holt came running out during one of the performances and threw eggs with a big, fat, wide grin on her face, actually, threw eggs at Simon Cowell. Mel's given me the Mail on Sunday's version of the story. The one I was looking at was another paper, and it's interesting because they've left this out in the Mail, but the song that was being sung at the time is Impossible Dream, which is pretty good.
Dream the impossible dream.
Dream the impossible, folks. Let's just stick on with the BGT thing. But, yeah, she threw eggs at him, and she said, it was a stand against miming on TV and Simon Cowell's, quote, dreadful influence on the music industry. Now, I don't know how many of you listeners are there now going, good on you, Natalie! or how many of you are going, no, it absolutely ruined the show for me. I don't know. I mean, maybe we're 50-50, or maybe some of you guys, or more of you people are on my side with being behind Natalie Holt. I've got nothing against Simon Cowell, but what I do find, as an old punk rocker, I'm 49 in July, and what I do find a little bit worrying is, have I become my dad? Because I listen to the charts and go, this just, the lyrics mean nothing, the beats are repetitive, it's completely empty. When I was young, our music really meant something. But it did, you know, I mean, you know, when I was this age, that age, you know, we were listening to Free Nelson Mandela, you know, God bless his soul, because he's very ill tonight. But, you know, there was a song, for all you younger listeners right now, there was a song, Free Nelson Mandela, by Special AKA. That was a very great song to bring out at its time. Very controversial. And music was political. It wasn't so, I suppose, business orientated. You know, this whole celebrity phenomenon is quite extraordinary, and I think very disturbing. Some of you listeners will know I was a teacher for 22 years, and I tell you, it is true. Over the last years when I was teaching, so many young people, when I said, what do you want to do? They were going, you know, and I know it sounds corny, but I'm telling you, this actually happens to me all the time. What do you want to do when you leave school? I want to be famous. What do you want to be famous doing? I don't have a clue. And I think that whole sort of idea of, you know, I just want to be a celebrity, I just want to be famous, you know, it's like Andy Warhol's 50 Minutes of Fame kind of story. I think something's gone from art, in the sense that, you know, money and the kind of money that you can make from acts and by managing them and stuff like that, it's stolen something. It's become very sort of normal and all pretty much the same. Of course, any 16 or 15-year-olds who are listening to this now ring me up and tell me that I'm just an old person who doesn't know what he's talking about. Please do that. And if you do ring and you start talking about people like Low Key or Suli Breaks and kind of young rappers, remind yourself they are outside of the industry. They're doing it outside of the industry. So we're talking here, Simon Cowell represents the industry, down the middle line, the industry. I think it's way too controlled. It's like anemic. It doesn't have threaten or challenge in the way that music did when I was a youngster, you know. But this is Natalie Holt anyway, and she threw the eggs at Simon Cowell. Instantly, her band. She was on a year ago, and their band didn't get through to the final. Didn't get anywhere at all, actually. And the band comes out on Twitter and go, "We had no idea she was doing it. We completely disown ourselves from her." And her various friends. One of the contestants was her flatmate, and her flatmate says, "No, I didn't know she can do it. I think it's just absolutely rubbish. She did it." And Rachel claimed this is one of her friends, Rachel. Claimed the group were approached by the show and deliberated over whether to audition. And this is one of the people in the band a year ago writing a blog that's now been removed, talking about what the experience was like on Britain's Got Talent. We had to acknowledge the grim truth, which was that Raven, that's the band, needed a bigger profile to get any kind of deal. We could get a load more gigs if we played to 15 million viewers, even if those viewers were of the opinion that a dog with a hula hoop constituted entertainment gold, which is absolutely fabulous. And Piers Morgan tweeted, "My vote goes to the egg thrower, #BGT," right? And then someone else looked at Natalie's tweets, and she had written a while ago, thinking about starting a petition to stop Piers Morgan being sent back over. So they got hold of Piers Morgan saying, have you seen her tweet about you in December? So he wrote back going on his Twitter, "If the egg thrower was at Film Music Holt," which it was her, as Twitter claims, "then after seeing her last tweet, I'm withdrawing my vote." But, you know, to start off with, he thought she was great. But, you know, yeah, what's happening to us? A dog with a hula hoop constitutes entertainment gold.
A couple of things I've got to stop you there. Yeah. So, OK, we could talk about Simon Cowell and whether it is a negative influence on television and on music, because he's firmly got a foot in both. And he's combined them together, brought back that interaction in television, made a very healthy living out of it. But I have been egged. I was talking to Mel about this earlier, Mel producer, it's only about 3 years ago, just walking up the road with some takeaway, funnily enough, walking home with a friend. Mel producer thinks it's hilarious, thinks he might have been the one who did it. But I won't lie to you, I cried like a baby because it was out of a moving car and it felt like a rock hitting my solar plexus. And it really was horrid, and I was covered in egg. It broke on me, and it was horrid. So look, I don't know how hard a throw this violinist may have been, Natalie. I'm sure she wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been quite like having an egg thrown at you from a moving car at speed. However, what a shock it must have been for Mr. Cowell. So would I like to anyone? I don't want any human being to be egged, especially in public. I found it humiliating on a street at night. So how he would feel about that happening to him on television? Okay. Is he a savvy chap that would enjoy the publicity that he got from it? Very much. So again, I put all of that out there. I'm not condoning any kind of protest where someone is hurt. I'm not condoning any kind of protest where people are humiliated. I just don't get it. But if you're talking about making a point, if this was really about her making a point about the music industry, what a way to make a point.
I'm with you all the way there. Jarvis Cocker with you as well, if you remember what Jarvis Cocker did a while ago with Michael Jackson.
Absolutely. Again, Mel and I were talking about this. We're trying to have a little think about these TV moments where people were, like, whether they were making a specific point or they just somehow humiliated the person they were with. And there are, in the old days, if you wanted attention or you wanted to draw attention, you would go and interrupt some kind of football or some kind of big sporting event.
Yeah, or the streakers.
Take your top off and go for a run. And some lucky or unlucky police officer would have to, cover you up and bundle you off. So is this the new version of modern streaking? Is this how people will now try and get attention? Because I don't know if you've noticed, this is a programme you may not always get to watch, depends on your schedule. I sometimes see the Daily Politics programme.
Yeah.
They often have live links with College Green, just outside Westminster, House of Parliament. Mm-hmm. And there is a chap who stands there with his message, which is a Christian message, on a piece of cardboard, and deliberately goes behind the live programme. And we think, when I've watched it, people I've been watching it with, we all think that he's on the phone to someone giving him instructions of, they're on now, go now. Because he just happens to float into shot. Mm-hmm. And they never have anybody who can move him away or... And to be fair, what would they be doing? He's legitimately protesting about his thoughts. Is this the new type of protest? Just waving onto screen? again, thinking back to Fathers for Justice and the very visible protest that they made, again, they had a specific point. They wanted their point to be heard. They cost the authorities thousands in terms of having to be policed and then removed and going into Parliament and throwing paint, I recall.
That's right, yeah.
So, yeah, they made their point very visibly, and that publicity. So is this what it is? Or this could easily also be a young lady who wanted to get some attention. I mean, I'm not suggesting that's not the case, but just thinking back about some of those big protesters, if anyone else remembers any, or there's someone, the humiliations on television, if you want to talk about that, I'm with you. I remember vividly Jarvis Cocker.
That was fantastic.
And Michael Jackson, and I think it might be a bit of a myth, but I think Bob Mortimer helped him out at the police station.
He did. Yeah, because Bob Mortimer was legally trained, so he went and helped him out. That's absolutely right. A friend of mine is Johnny Marbles, who flanned Murdoch, right?
I know you're a friend of his.
Yeah, and he got put away for 10 days for doing that as well, which is quite shocking, considering that it was just a flan. It's not painful
and
or violent.
We're not asking him directly. I'm asking you to give me a summation of his thoughts. Does he regret it? Did he regret it? After 10 days in jail?
Jail's frightening for anyone, but he said, I couldn't believe that I ended up actually that close. It was vaguely a plan, as in he brought a flan in that was covered up, but he thought, I'll never get a chance of doing it. And he actually ended up sitting so close. He thought, I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I don't flan this guy. Because he has very strong feelings about Murdoch's media empire being somewhat suspect, in his opinion. And, so he just went ahead and flanned him, but then got heavily, arrested and actually got locked up for 10 days.
He got a smack off Wendy.
He did. He got smack. I don't know how hard. In fact, that might be quite hard, actually. But
she looked like she works out. It looked like it was quite a mean slap, I've got to say.
It's not a new tactic, you're talking about the streakers back in the old days, which
guerrilla protests.
Those,
or guerrilla retention. I'm not sure which one it was necessarily.
There are different ways of doing it, but with Natalie Holt, who brought us onto this, I think your viewers who are watching it last night might suspect. I don't think she's being particularly political. I think she's doing her own act, really. She has a very big grin the whole time as she's doing it.
I've got to say, the cynic in me thinks this was less about protesting music industry, more about promoting herself.
Yeah. Okay.
And the fact we didn't know her name before this, and we know her name after.
Exactly.
I'm a cynic, though. I am a cynic. If anyone wants to dispute that, go ahead. Give us a call.
Do ring up if you're listening, Natalie Holt, by the way. It'd be really interesting to hear your story.
Wouldn't that be fun to hear? 020 722 4000. Natalie or friends of Natalie, give her a bell. Tell her to give us a call on 0207 224 2000 so we can get your side of the story. That'd be fascinating. We're going to take another radical shift in story now, if that's all right with you, Jamie. Let's talk about what's been happening in Istanbul and with these protests in Turkey. I'm finding it fascinating. There's been a real wave of protests across Europe, and I'm a little surprised. I'm just always surprised by the strength of emotion and how small things can spark them off. So again, I'm thinking back to 2011 and August in London, and a small thing it may, I'm not suggesting it wasn't an upsetting thing, but the death of somebody in a police incident, we still don't have a result on from an inquiry, was able to spark London-wide riots. And then all the way up to here. And there have been other countries who have had their own rioting issues, and so-called civilized countries, not anywhere there's unrest or concern. So let's talk about Istanbul and when, and what's going on with the president there, the prime minister there.
Well, there's you're referring to the riots back in London. There's two different things. This is definitely not a riot. This is like an occupation, and they're using the same tactics that Occupy used, and the same with Occupy in London.
But treated very differently.
We were not heavily gassed like these people were at all. I mean, that's what's really inflamed it all. So if your listeners haven't been following the story, there was a small couple of hundred people who basically, there's a main square in the middle of Istanbul, and the President Erdogan, I'm just making it up, that pronunciation.
I think you were pretty close.
Was it good? Pretty convincing?
Pretty close,
okay.
Yeah.
He wants to build a shopping mall in this. It's the equivalent of Hyde Park, basically, in Istanbul. He wanted to build a shopping mall there and an army barracks, I believe, as well. And there was a couple of hundred protesters who didn't want that to happen, and they went down and they used that Occupy technique of occupying that area with tents and sort of making a stand. And the police, from all reports, and again, if you use Twitter, you can actually see live photographs and film being sent to you straight away, so you know it's absolutely true what you're looking at. There was very, very strong tear gas. It's a tear gas that most people aren't used to, I've never heard of before, but it was really strong, and they were very, very violent with those few hundred protesters. That's what was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of the population in Turkey, in the sense that thousands and thousands and thousands of people have now gone down there, and it's gone way beyond the issue of will they build a shopping mall in this park?
In Gezi Park,
in Gezi Park, and it's much more to do with structural change, systemic change in Turkey, and in a way...
Well, it's to do with Erdogan's, the Prime Minister's regime, because it's gone from seemingly democratic to very autocratic in his style, and the people of Turkey, from what we're seeing from our perspective, they look like they just had the limit. They're at their limit.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what's happening. And the thing is, his argument, his rhetoric's very strong, because he was voted in with fairly high percent the last time he came in. It's his third time he's been voted in. So the whole argument is, I've been democratically voted in. These people are the minority because the majority voted for me. But I think it's
he's describing them as Leninists and Marxists.
that's what you get. And and in fact, he went more than that. Leninists as Marxists, but also terrorists and vandals and drunkards as well. Because one of the issues is a lot of the people in the population suspect that he's bringing in a stronger sense of Islam in Turkey, where it's not such a...
It's a secular country.
Yeah, it's a secular country, and he's brought out this law that you can't drink between, I think it's 6 o'clock in the evening and 6 o'clock the next morning or something, so he's limiting alcohol stuff. So he's obviously saying, you're Leninists, you're alcoholics, you're vandals, but just look at the film and look at the photographs and look at the accounts that have been given by people. They're not. And it's actually grown into a really, really big camp as a result of it. And I think, the point I'm making is, and this happens a lot, it might have started with a very specific issue, but it's spread into a much wider issue. They're not just challenging his government and his rule. They're challenging the actual system that it's living under, and they're actually looking for a wider global economic system. That's what's everyone, the language that they're coming out with is language that I've recognised from countries around the world, and that's what's exciting for people like me is, and we've been waiting for it for a long time, but what's exciting is it seems that lots of people under their own volition are beginning to come out into the streets and say there's got to be a better world for all. And it's not just a matter of something that you can go and vote for once every 5 years. It's actually something that you need to get up out of your chair, go out into the street and seek it together for yourselves. And they're very much caught up in that sort of vision, which is really exciting, because it would be brilliant if it's totally peaceful, there's no one breaking anything like that, or there's no one particular political rhetoric that's coming out of it.
For example,
it's like visceral politics, you might call it.
If you juxtapose that with what happened in Stockholm, the fact that there was riots in Stockholm over concerns of migration and concerns of social mobility and people with no money saying, we feel marginalised, and you look back to 2011 here, and a whole underclass rising up saying, I want free shoes and I'm really angry. Or I'm so removed from community, the only thing I can do now is go and riot and loot.
Yeah.
What's going on to me, what seems stark and frightening in some respects to me, is that people can't make the electoral system work for them anymore. There's a real disconnect between, well, you wait till the next election and action. People are now going, well, there's no point. I'd rather sit outside St Paul's or sit in the centre of Istanbul and risk whatever the consequence may be, obviously much worse in Istanbul than here, or equally, I'm going to go and burn a car out because no one's going to listen to me otherwise.
Well, the go and burn a car out is a rioting approach, and what's happening in Taksim Square, what happened with Occupy, it was not a rioting approach. It's a totally non-violent direct action movement. And yes, what's happening globally is that people are questioning the political system itself. They are beginning to, not beginning to, it's been happening for 2 years, but people are going, we are not being represented by our governments. Our governments are actually the puppets of corporations and banking institutions. We do not feel like there's true politics.
Democracy's broken.
Democracy's completely owned, that's... And I'm not saying this, with my fingers crossed, hoping that's what they're thinking. I know for a fact that that's what's happening. That's you wouldn't even call it rhetoric, but that sort of vision, or that sort of idea, or that concern, or that challenge is being repeated in so many different languages that we're following at the moment. You know? I mean, New Internationalist's been coming for a long time, but it's the first time ever where we see it constantly being repeated right across the world, and that's really exciting. New Internationalist sees this crisis as a really interesting opportunity, because the system has to change. If you want to have a decent future for the species, the system has to change, and it seems like no one started it off. It's just organically happening all around the world.
And forgive me, I do understand you're completely right in the respect that Occupy is a very different approach to the right approach.
Yep.
But you can see why I'm suggesting them, not the link that they're linked in their actions, they're different actions, but the frustrations are boiling over that people just don't feel any confidence that they're being listened to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is more the reference I was making, as opposed to, you know, again, people in Turkey are sitting there and they're being as peaceful as they possibly can, and they are still then getting awful treatment. Again, there is a real disconnect between what we're seeing in this country and what's being reported there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I believe, if I was correct, some of the things I read, I think one of the television stations apologised, or was it a newspaper? There was an apology from one of the media outlets in Turkey saying, we're really sorry we didn't cover this properly.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if you know this, but they just showed penguins for 48 hours. Did you know about this?
I didn't know about penguins.
It's a show about, instead of covering what was happening in their own country, one of the major stations showed a programme about penguins continually. Yeah, so that's probably what they're apologising for, you know.
Yeah, frightening. Absolutely frightening. I don't know if anyone wants to call about this, any of the subjects we've discussed, you are more than welcome. But I think the biggest thing for me is that right now, from the perspective we're sat in, it looks like an horrific approach to people with a peaceful intention, but a dangerous intention if you're the Prime Minister who doesn't want to change.
Spot on.
Fascinating. You're not going without us mentioning a very quick mention on one of the stories that was in our news bulletin earlier. I believe it's now being called or described by many papers as Lobbygate.
Lobbygate. Okay, so the other phrase that's being used a lot is Westminster for sale, because it tunes into a whole stream of stories that have been happening since last year, and it's the same thing the whole time, where undercover journalists posing as private companies have elicited, paid for, or claimed that they've elicited paid for lobbying by ministers and MPs and lords. There was one, both of these, the recent ones have been broken by Sunday Times. One was today and one was last Sunday. So your listeners probably know about last Sunday. There was three lords who were implicated, again, in abusing basically their political powers to represent private corporations.
And this is the moment I chip in and say, of course,
Alleged.
Absolutely. These matters are yet to be fully investigated. There is some video evidence, but it's certainly not entirely a done deal. And the respect that today's latest, mentioned in our bulletin, Tim Yeo, is rejecting any claims he's done absolutely anything wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very important thing to bring up, that phrase, it's not illegal, because I think we've heard that ever such a lot. And this is alleged. We don't know. You know, we went up with the, Tim Yeo, as you said, has put himself forward saying, I'd like me to be investigated, which is a very important state for him to take. But I think it may well turn out that what they are doing is legal, in the same way that tax evasion is legal. But whether it's morally or ethically correct, everyone's got to question that fact, folks. If you look at the kind of history of lobbying, interestingly, so take it away from anything that might be seen as being anti-government for a minute, lobbying comes from Thomas Jefferson, interestingly, in the States, when he was at the White House. There's a lobby in the front of the White House. And so the whole phrase lobbying comes from Jefferson, who's a very, very clever fella, sitting outside in the lobby as people were going into the White House, going, hey, let me have your word for a minute, I want your ear for a minute, what do you think about this issue? And basically influencing. So lobbying is just basically influencing. Now, what I find really important to bear in mind is corporations are they're using this system to lobby. Now, when you talk about corporations, you're talking about trillions. They have an unlimited amount of money to get MPs to influence. To influence, yeah. Okay, so not talking about anything illegal, or anything alleged or not alleged, but that's the way the system works. But normal people don't have the avenue to do that. Now, some friends of mine were involved in a court case on Thursday, which was No Dash for Gas. If you remember, Kath, in December last year, they closed down a power station for a week, and they went to court on Thursday. Three of them we thought were going to go to prison, but they didn't, which is fantastic. But they are for us.
Were they sanctioned? Forgive me. What were they? What sentence were they given? Or
they've given them community charge. And unpaid work. But we thought they're going to go away.
You made Mel very nervous. Producer Mel has to make sure that we're doing things properly in the studio.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, that's so far I'm doing okay. I think. Yeah, all right. No, but anyway, this is what the point I make. It's very simple, and I think it's an interesting way of looking at it. To me, they're my lobbyists. Those people who risk their liberty, 21 of them, went up the top of a funnel for a week. They're my
lobbyists without money.
Yeah, but they have to go to these extremes to show the other side of things, because the companies that are fighting for gas are multi-rich. They're the ones who can go into Parliament and influence politicians. We can't afford to do that. So our kind of people have to go up the top of power stations instead, you know?
And I could give you the devil's advocate, or possibly my actual opinion in some respects, by doing that, by having that kind of active protest, as interesting and as thought-provoking as it is, for doing it for so long and causing so much financial pain to some. You know what the problem is? The problem is they gain people's negativity toward their cause. It doesn't help their cause. But sadly, Jamie, we've run out of time.
Yeah, it's been a ball as always. Fantastic talking to you, Miss Melandri.
So true, so true. I could chat to you all day, literally. And if there was no producer here, we would carry on. But we've been told off. So, Jamie, if people want to know more about you, follow you, find out what you're up to.
Yes,
how can they do that?
Jamie Kelsey Fry. That's at Jamie Kelsey Fry. That's my Twitter. And New Internationalist is newint.org. And it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you folks. And I hope I speak to you again soon. Take care.
Thank you very much. Jamie Kelsey Fry there.